How you doing, Faith?
I'm okay.
Mike sounds good. Thank you.
Hold on. How's that?
Oh, that's even better.
Okay, good.
How you doing, Josh?
Hey, Markeith. I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm well. And your mic sounds good.
Good. You can hear me? I'm good.
Yep.
All right. I will then check out and let other people check in with you. All right.
Sounds good. How you doing, Judy?
Good to see you again, Markeith.
You.
It's been a whole night.
Yep.
So there's two people out here talking for the meeting. So it's not.
Hey, Amy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I had my laptop turned down.
I was trying to talk low, but I realized that the speakers aren't on in here quite yet, so it's not gonna.
All right. How you doing, Ty?
Good. I'm at this Airbnb, so y'all know this video about to be off. This Wi-Fi is some boo-boo. Can y'all hear me though?
Yeah.
Okay, bad.
How you doing there, Heminger?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Markeith, I always laugh when you say Mary because I look around. We have a Mary Jane. She's Mary Jane, and I have to look. I'm like, who's Mary?
Yo, Mayor Hemingers.
What? How are you, Ty?
I'm doing awful. So my tongue is like kind of swollen. So I kind of got this lisp thing going on.
Oh my goodness, Ty.
So I will be doing minimal talking. Plus, I was just telling Markeith, I'm at this Airbnb's. and the Wi-Fi is booty, so my video will also be off.
Oh, we're having a
On top of
wonderful
my list.
thunderstorm here, so we can get knocked all about around down here too. So it should be a
I'm
fun
having-
evening. Fun evening.
One of those days.
Ty, I'm sorry. Do you think you have COVID again, or do you think it's just stuff
No, I think it's like a allergic reaction.
to the Airbnb?
No, to something I ate.
Well, go get some Zyrtec or Zyasol or something.
Yes, I'll figure it out.
Oh, sorry. All right. You got my email about you have to be recused from one of the votes anyway?
Yes, so I can vote on the first.
You can vote on the budget. You can't vote on the resolution that does the funding for the HSAB.
Gotcha. No S and I.
Yeah. So same with Michael, same with you. You got the email?
Yeah,
Okay. Good.
but you're going to tell us anyway. You're going to make sure.
I am. I just didn't
You're
want
going to keep us all organized.
Oh, no. I'm not hurting.
No,
cats
yes.
completely. Yeah. Well, no, I wanted to make sure no one was surprised. I don't like surprises. So we're going to try to make it work. But this was new and different as we tried to figure out what to do. So
Heard anything from the league? They have any faith that they'll be able to get it changed?
they're trying to get it tweaked instead of changed. And so they're
Well,
trying.
whatever, but yeah, so it's not so obnoxious, yeah.
Yeah. Thought this came up with a good plan to try to separate the two out, but yeah, it's kind of weird. Oh, sorry, let me turn Alexa off.
Hi, Colleen and Jacob. Can I get a quick sound check? And hey, Michael, I know your mic is good.
You can hear us jabbering.
You hardly need a mic with me.
Michael, I heard the art center did have an outbreak of COVID.
Well, so far it's just 2. I don't know if they've
Okay.
found more.
Okay.
I got an email yesterday about 2. I don't know if they've got more than that. That was the last I heard.
Sorry. Hmm.
I mean, you had to know it was gonna, I mean, we're pretending. We're just living in a pretend
pretending.
world right now.
I know, it's hard. All right, well,
Hey,
unfortunately,
Marquise.
printer does not want to cooperate, so I'm gonna have to be winging it on the announcements here.
Marquise, am I coming through?
You are, both of you are. Thank you. How you doing, Pierce?
Hi, good evening, Marquise. How are you?
I'm well, and you sound good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Paris.
Hey. Hey, Michael. Hey, Pam.
Greetings.
Hello.
I miss
Paris,
you,
I thought
Paris.
you got the email and you understand?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, okay.
Just prompt me, say, be quiet.
I was just trying to make sure we didn't have surprises because it took a little while to figure it all out and then we think we got it, but we'll all learn from this anyway. So here we go.
And if not, we'll just all visit each other in jail.
No.
Uh-oh, why are we
I
going to
heard the
jail?
state treasurer now wants to come out with stricter reforms. I'm like,
I read that. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It's
No,
mostly
but
for distressed communities.
I know.
I
but-
just rewatched the episode of Atlanta about jail. It's not great.
Okay. Well, let's try
I
not to go there.
recommend it.
I don't think we're gonna go there.
Me Either.
Marquise, am I okay?
You are. Thank you. And how you doing, Jess? Can I get a quick
Hi,
sound?
Marquise. Can you hear me?
Yep. Thank you.
You.
I did send you all the audit information and there will be a quiz, just so you know, so.
Okay.
Oh, are we talking about going to jail over the audit?
No,
No, that, not-for-profit boards.
No, we're just being silly. We're fine.
Well,
I'm
I
sure
was
Sheriff-
hoping, I mean,
I'm sure Sheriff Blackwood will take very good care of us.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
yeah, maybe the new jail will be constructed in time because the
It
old
is,
one.
it's open.
It
Yeah.
is, it's open. It's
Oh,
open.
Yeah.
perfect. Because if
Mhm.
I have to go to jail, I don't want to go to that old one. I did
No,
a tour and it
no,
is
yeah.
grotesque. So
Nope.
yeah, that's
Can't be as bad as
Better
Atlanta.
yeah.
Y'all are silly tonight.
Yeah, punchy. This is what happens. Do you remember last year we had to add 5 extra meetings and we
Was
got
it 5? I knew we added,
I'm
was
feeling
it
pretty
actually
good,
5?
Huh?
That's not what I want
to hear.
I remember, yeah, that spring was rough.
Last
That
That
spring
was
was
bad.
really.
We weren't even punchy. We were just kind of mad.
Remember we had the one night of all concept plan reviews? And
Uh-huh.
ooh, that was rough. It's just
Bad.
election happened when it did then.
Last
One
spring
pack
was no fun.
958 pages long, and you're like, oh,
I'll be right
Yeah.
back.
felt sorry for staff, I felt for the public, for us, everybody.
At least
Nobody
we're not
won.
killing trees anymore for those things.
Yeah.
Camille, Karen, Lauren, and Ann.
And how's trial work?
Hi, Markeith.
Hey, oh, sorry, here I am.
Here you are.
We're very busy, but going well, thank you for
Okay.
asking.
We're thinking of you.
We're gonna win, of course.
Yay. We like that.
Of course. And we'll get legal fees, right?
I can't promise that one. You know what they say, well, I won't say it. Any lawyer who promises you they're gonna win. So take it for what it's worth. We are certainly
They
going
all.
to try.
Wait,
Everyone
so
had
if you
their
get a
ballots
traffic
in.
ticket and the lawyer says they can win for you, you shouldn't believe it?
Oh, yeah, well. Go to Vegas much, Ty?
Nah, I just get a lot of speeding tickets.
Oh.
We're just gonna have to have a conversation some other time, Ty.
There you go.
Right.
Okay. Don't laugh at me, Maurice.
I'm so proud of all of you for getting your ballots in before the meeting. It's just, wow. Just thank you.
We're making huge strides.
No,
Huge.
it's awesome.
Yeah, that ballot shaming was getting painful.
I know. And it was mostly directed at me. I didn't care for it at all. Ty, I think the pandemic has done amazing things for people getting traffic tickets because people can work from home. So I really,
It's
Oh.
the drive from Charlotte to Chapel Hill that kills me.
Yeah, they're pretty tough along there.
yeah.
I stay getting a ticket on that road. It makes me
Yeah.
so mad.
Well, it's either construction or, yeah.
I actually thought all my tickets had like rolled off. And then because I was chaperoning a school field trip, they did like the school background check. And it was like this list of tickets. And I was like, what is this? These were supposed to be gone. That was shaming too. It was like you with the ballots.
What? I didn't know tickets roll off. What is this?
Off your insurance, yeah.
So I
And
just
like
haven't
it's
been
supposed to
around
roll off
enough.
background checks, but I
Like
don't,
4 or 5 years after, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Dang.
Us older folks know this.
I think it's 3 years for insurance. I don't know about other things.
That's right. 3 for insurance. That's right.
30 seconds.
I know that there are some issues of motions to recuse tonight. So if there's, I think you have language, Mayor, but if there's
Yes.
confusion,
10 seconds.
Oh,
We may
tell
have-
me. I can
Confused
just-
that I sent the email out there, so we will do our best.
I think it's pretty straightforward, but I can always pop up if there's a question.
Okay.
Live.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the June 8th Town of Chapel Hill Council meeting. We're glad to have you with us, however you are watching us, whether you're joining us here on online or watching us on TV or watching us later. We're glad to have your participation. We are going to be staying virtual, just to remind folks, through the end of the month. Numbers have been climbing a little bit, and we will be virtual next week on the 15th, and we will be virtual for our kickoff meeting on June 21st. I believe that's the date. So just to make sure everyone's aware of all that. And tonight we have a lot of items on our agenda, but we'll see how we get through that, because I'm hoping that we can move through them in a good form. There are 7 items up for discussion. 2 are related to the budget and ARPA funds. Then there'll be a public hearing on the Peach Apartments. We'll be considering revisions to the library internet policy. We'll be considering a request to allow advisory board to continue acting on matters remotely. and a presentation to the policy options for electrification of buildings in town as part of our climate action response. And then we'll be making appointments to advisory boards at the end of the meeting. And we do enjoy public comment. We welcome you to participate. We had a few people register ahead of time, but if you didn't do that, you're still welcome to participate online by using the raise your hand function or the *9 if you're on your phone. In keeping with state laws on virtual meetings, we need to have a roll call. So I will call out your name, and if you'll unmute yourself and say "I present here," whatever works for you, that would be great. Mayor Pro Tem Stegman.
Here.
Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Berry.
Here.
Mr. Nguyen.
Here.
Ms. Miller-Fushi.
Here.
Mr. Parker.
Here.
Ms. Ryan.
Here.
Mr. Searing.
Here.
And the mayor is here too. Thank you. Great. All right. And before we get started with other parts of the agenda, we do have a couple of proclamations this month. And first up is about Pride Month and LGBTQ. And to lead us off, we have our own council Mayor Pro Tem, Ms. Stegman.
Thank you, Mayor. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender and queer plus Pride Month is celebrated nationwide each year in the month of June as a time to reflect on the achievements of the LGBTQ plus rights movement and the work that remains to be done. As a town, Chapel Hill has led the state in advancing equal protection and freedom under the law for LGBTQ people in many ways, such as electing LGBTQ plus leaders to local government, supporting marriage equality and trans equality, and being the first in the state, along with Hillsborough and Carrboro, to adopt a non-discrimination ordinance once House Bill 142 expired in December 2020. Furthermore, the town's embrace and support of its LGBTQ plus residents and employees is reflected in this year's HRC Municipal Equity Index score, which is a perfect 100 out of 100, which is very exciting. Further, tonight, the town council wishes to reaffirm its opposition to discrimination, prejudice, homophobia, and transphobia. We vehemently reject the legislature's recent proposed House Bill 755, a Don't Say Gay bill modeled after Florida's suppressive law that seeks to remove all curriculum that supports, affirms, and protects LGBTQ plus students in our elementary schools. We call on our state leaders to focus instead on protecting all of North Carolina's children from discrimination and harm and respecting all families in our state. We are committed to continue our advocacy on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community, and tonight are proclaiming June 2022 to be LGBTQ plus month in Chapel Hill. In so doing, we call on all residents to continue being champions for inclusivity and equality for everyone. We also invite everyone across the Triangle and state to join our Pride events all month long. Apex, Holly Springs, come on over.
Thank you. And we do have several wonderful activities going on this month. You can check the town calendar. We're partnering with Carrboro to make these happen. It was a wonderful turnout this past Saturday for the Pride Parade, and we hope to see more events, attract more folks to come out and learn and celebrate together as we uphold the LGBTQ folks in our community. All right, it is also Aphasia month. I hope I'm saying that right. And we do have a Chapel Hill resident, our former transportation chair, Jeff Charles, wanted to share this with us, but we're not seeing him logged on. So Amy Ryan, Councilmember Ryan, has offered to help with this. And if you can read what we have for this, and then we will make sure that we post it out on social media and welcome in Jeff if he gets here online.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. We appreciate Chapel Hill resident Jeff Charles for his request to raise awareness about aphasia in our community. About 750,000 strokes occur each year in the United States. Aphasia is a language disorder that affects 30% of stroke survivors. From the National Aphasia Association, we know that there are often warning signs of stroke, such as unexplained loss of hearing or trouble with vision or speech. Research is ongoing about how aphasia can be treated, and new treatment methods include ways to shift brain function so people can relearn language. And people with aphasia who receive 8 to 10 hours of treatment per week show more progress than those who do not. National Aphasia Awareness Month provides an opportunity for us to learn more about this condition and teaches us how to help individuals with this condition live a better life. Therefore, tonight we proclaim June 2022 as Stroke and Aphasia Awareness Month in Chapel Hill and encourage everyone to learn more about aphasia in order to be better communication partners for those in our community with aphasia. Thank you.
Thank you. And I still don't see, oh, Jeff is there, so let's bring him over. Markeith, can you help us with that?
I just clicked to bring him over. Here he goes.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello, we're glad to have you with us.
Thank you. I misunderstood. I actually went to town hall.
Oh, we're sorry.
No.
Because of COVID, we've stayed virtual through June. Oh, here it is.
Hey. Okay.
Yes.
When would you like me to start?
Go ahead and start. Ms. Ryan's already read the proclamation information, so we just want to hear from you.
Well, thank you. Okay. Tonight I want to make a reservation to a major improvement on Homestead Road. They will emphasize connectivity for this road. My petition is based on my expenditure in transportation and connectivity that I've gained over a decade of service over the Orange County Outboard and also the Chapel Hill Connectivity Board. The slide that I'm showing now, can you see it?
No, we can't. But Jeff, we were talking about the aphasia proclamation right now, not the petition. So go ahead.
I can't understand.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I am confused.
It's
I
okay.
thought I was going to be talking about my petition.
Okay.
Homestead Road.
You had asked us to talk about aphasia tonight, so that's what we were doing, but you're welcome to bring your petition. It's fine. You can go ahead with your petition. That's fine.
Okay. Oh man. Okay, so I made my petition based on my experience over a decade in transportation and connectivity. And I've gained through about 10 years of service on the Orange County Transportation Board and also your Transportation and Connectivity Board. The Homestead Road is totally overwhelmed at this point based on the traffic. So I am suggesting in the petition that I sent you that the road gets widened and also you put in a roundabout. Now, you know the process as well or better than me. We have to compete for D funding against other areas in our state area. It could take 10 years to get the funding since it's such a large project. But my point is you better start now. The point about Homestead Road is its connectivity. Connectivity is very large in many ways. There are hundreds of households that rely on this road to connect to the town. There are 3 schools off this road, access to the senior center, the need to allow the Chapel Hill Fire Station to service this area. It also provides an alternative access to Carborough, come in instead of having to use Rounder Street. It also provides access for cars and bicycles to enjoy the beautiful area of Dairyland Road in Orange County. But maybe even more important, it allows you to visit the Magby View ice cream store. The proposed roundabout would be at the intersection of Weeder Road Extension and also Homestead Road. This is a very busy section, and also this corner, it would also borders the Wood property, and it would make sense that the Wood property should have its entrance off of this roundabout. It would probably mean that some of the Wood proper would have to be annexed to allow this type of roundabout. But it would also make it easier for our development to get in and out without having to worry about the Wood property development. The other part of my petition was asking council to consider creating an advisory board of citizens and town staff to address what does connectivity mean now in the present, and what will it mean in the future? I think it's important to ask residents, what do they really want between developments? I think that's critical. How am I doing on time?
Well, you're way over, but we have to wrap up for us and send it in writing would help too.
Yeah, that is what I'm gonna do. Again, if you decide to create this advisor board, I volunteer to serve on it. Let me go ahead, stop at this point. I appreciate your extra time. I'm sorry I'm out of bread because, going down to town kind of wore me out. Thank you.
But thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
And thank you so much.
When we get to the petitions part, we'll move that to be received and referred, and we'll get there. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Council members, time for announcements. I have a few, but Ms. Ryan asked to talk about gun violence awareness and our activity around that. So Ms. Ryan?
Yeah. I'd like to thank everybody who came out on Friday to Peace and Justice Plaza for National Gun Violence Awareness Day, with special thanks to the North Carolinians Against Gun Violence for providing a resource table and speaking at the rally. I saw a great picture that the town put out today of everyone arranged in their orange on Peace and Justice Plaza steps. It was really great to see. So that afternoon, we asked people to take the next step and write to their elected officials, asking them to take action to protect Americans from escalating gun violence. With the help of the mayor's office and Mayor Pro Tem Karen Stegman, I've been drafting a letter to North Carolina Senators Burr and Tillis to share our support for common sense gun control measures at the federal level. So I just wanted to let council know once that draft is ready, we'll be circulating it to everybody and see who wants to sign on before we send it. But it was a great event. I'm just really heartened to see the strong support in our community for gun violence, smart gun violence control measures. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you. And we got confirmation today that the Senate received our letters from the U.S. Conference of Mayors and every town that I signed on for our community. And we did get confirmation that Tillis is actually Senator Tillis is actually considering moving forward with bipartisan support for sensible gun laws. So it does help, and we encourage everyone to continue to write our senators. Our state reps have already been supportive of this. It's already passed the House. So we need our senators, and that's what we're encouraging folks to do. Next week, we do have our council meeting on the 15th, again, virtually. And then there's also a few town meetings next week. There's a public information meeting on bike and pedestrian wayfinding plan. It's going to be Tuesday, June 14th from 5 to 7 p.m. on the library back porch. And people are encouraged to come and drop in and talk with staff consultants about the preliminary designs. And then we have our kickoff meeting on June 21st for visioning future of our community. Again, that will be virtual to remind you of that. Are there other announcements of things coming up? Mr. Searing.
I just had a short one. I just want to really thank our public works, sanitation and solid waste folks. They were very nice to have me out this week to very early in the morning to see their operations and getting all our trash, especially Ms. Simmons and Mr. Jones. They work with the town manager to host me out there and around some of the routes. And so I appreciate it. And my trash can is going to be sparkling clean every time it goes out to the curb from now on.
All right.
So, yeah.
Really good. Mr. Parker?
Just wanted to take a quick moment to congratulate the UNC Tar Heel baseball team for a very productive weekend, shall we say, making it out of the losers bracket, winning their regional, and they will be hosting the super regional here in Chapel Hill starting at 11 a.m. on Saturday morning. If you can get tickets, which doesn't look to be easy, I would encourage everybody to go.
Great. Yeah, it was a spectacular turnaround. All right, Ms. Miller-Fuchs and Ms. Berry, the Misstatement. Lots of announcements tonight. Okay.
I just wanted to say congratulations to Eleazar Posado, who is the newly sworn in council member with the town of Carborough. So congratulations, Eleazar.
Yeah. Ms. Berry?
Continuing with the congratulations, I'm not sure if we congratulated the women's lacrosse team at UNC for winning the national championship. And thanks to Adam or Councilmember Searing, I'm reminded that I was treated to a ride along a couple of weeks ago with the police department, and Officer Calderon was my host. I made it until 3 a.m. and boy, does this town look different after midnight. I encourage everyone to take a ride and also to spend some time in our police station. That was eye-opening. So thank you very much for that.
All right, Ms. Stegman?
Yeah, just to add on to Councilmember Ryan's comments, just sharing that on Saturday, there is nationally the March for Our Lives is taking place in DC and also at the state level. And the one here is in Raleigh at 10 a.m. at Halifax Mall. Many of the organizations who work on this issue are kind of co-sponsoring and helping to organize it. So it's another great opportunity to come out and show your support for gun control measures.
Yeah, encourage folks to come out. Also, I know we sent an email around, but our town was highlighted at the U.S. Conference of Mayors on the Arpa funding for being we were the only small town highlighted for taking an equity lens to our ARPA funds and looking at those kinds of issues. So I thought that was really cool. We'll have more information to share with you later, but we were highlighted in at the conference last week. So it's good. Okay, so that does move us on. Hang on. We have a public comment on things not on the printed agenda and petitions. We have a Cultural Arts Commission's request for arts funding, amending the membership and delaying spring appointments. We've seen this petition. I don't know that there's anyone here to speak on behalf of this petition, but we did receive it. So that means we have 2 petitions so far, and we will ask, is there anyone else wishing to speak on items not on this printed agenda or that has a petition they wish to share with us? Oh,
Robert Beasley has a petition.
Okay.
I think he's the only one.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. I sent this in. I'll try and read it quickly. Mayor and Town Council of Chapel Hill, I formally petition the Chapel Hill Town Council to direct the Town Community Resilience Officer to implement monthly testing of Bowling Creek surface water, Bowling Creek stream sediment, drainage pathway soil, and Bowling Creek trail soil for coal combustion products, CCPs, contamination from the 828 MLK site. This monthly testing is a necessary addition to the existing visual monitoring of the town's 2020 interim remedial measures to ensure adequate risk mitigation by the IRMs until they, as recommended by Hart and Hickman in their 2021 risk assessment report, are replaced with permanent measures. As Mayor Pro Tem Karen Stegman said in the March 23rd, 2022 Town Council meeting regarding the measures, it is starting to fail. And based on the timeline shared by Belmont Sayre in the April 27th 828 MLK concept plan review, demolition of the existing site improvements would not begin until first or second quarter of 2024. Therefore, these failing IRMs will be in place for another 18 months or more. According to the town's coal ash disposal site remediation project webpage, the last testing of these types was performed in 2020. Without this testing, the town's ability to ensure the risk of contaminating the Bowling Creek Greenway Trail and Bowling Creek itself with exposed CCPs from the MLK site is greatly impaired. Visual inspection of the IRMs themselves is inadequate. Monthly testing will provide the town with early detection of contamination due to IRM failures over the next 18 or more months. And the testing will provide an opportunity for the town to more quickly intervene as necessary and implement improvements to the IRMs that can prevent prolonged contamination and exposure to CCP hazards while we wait for the permanent measures to be started. Thank you for receiving this petition and for the town's swift action upon it.
Thank you.
Is that the final petition?
I'm not sure. Karen, you said there were 2 participants that raised hands.
No, I think that was it.
Okay.
So then
I
I'll
move that we
receive
receive and refer.
Okay, I got 2 of you saying that. So we'll go Ms. Berry this time is making a motion to receive and refer the petitions to the manager and mayor, and seconded by Ms. Anderson. We'll need a roll call vote. So as I call your name, please say aye or yes, whatever works. Okay, Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Where'd Mr. Wynn go? There you are, Mr. Wynn.
Aye.
Ms. Miller-Fushi.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Thank you for bringing these forward. Okay, tonight we have the consent agenda in front of you. It is broken into 2 parts. I will be asking at the beginning of each of the parts that if you have a conflict as defined by the new laws that have been in place and existing laws that have been in place, that you announce that you have a conflict and what your conflict is. On the first set of information, is there anyone that has a conflict on the first part of the consent agenda? Great. Is there a motion to approve the first half of the consent agenda?
I move the first half of the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Ryan, second by Ms. Anderson for the first half of the consent agenda. There will be a roll call vote, please. So we start with Ms. Stegman. Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Wynn.
Aye.
Ms. Miller-Fushi.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Thank you. Y'all keep jumping around. It's hard to catch you all. Okay, and then on the second half of the consent agenda, there are several items, and I believe we do have one person who has a conflict of interest. Ms. Miller-Fushi.
Yes, thank you. As an employee of both IFC and a board member of Empowerment, I will not be able to vote on item 13, 0.9 and number 13.
Sorry, no, it's the consent agenda part here. And you just need to say you need to be recused from voting.
Thank you.
That's fine. That's good. That's good. All right.
Awesome.
I think you're the only one on this particular part of the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if you just will abstain when we call your name. Okay. Okay.
I'll move this part of the consent agenda.
Oh, Ms. Anderson, you have something to share?
No, I said I was moving this part of the consent agenda.
Other Anderson, sorry, Ms. Ann Anderson.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Anderson. As a matter of procedure under the new statute, if someone could make a motion to formally recuse Councilmember Paris Miller-Fushi, then you can move to the vote on the consent.
Oh, great. And we have to do a roll call vote for that as well.
Motion and second and roll call. Yes, ma'am.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Anderson, are you, Ms. Jess Anderson, are you for?
Yes, I've moved that we officially allow Councilmember Paris Miller-Fushi to be recused from this vote.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Ms. Anderson and Mr. Nguyen to recuse Ms. Miller-Fushi from this particular vote. Roll call vote, please. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
I guess Ms. Miller-Fushi, you have to abstain on this vote too. Yeah, that would be probably appropriate. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
And Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Now, Ms. Ryan, do you want the motion for the second half of the consent that you started?
I think Jess started.
Oh, sorry.
Doesn't matter. You're welcome to have it.
Move the second part of the consent agenda.
Second.
Great. Roll call vote, please. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. So we have one abstention. So both parts of the consent agenda are now approved. Thank you very much. Okay. And then this brings us up to the final budget and related items for fiscal year 2022, 2023. And I'll go through the parts of the voting after we finish the presentation. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm Race Jones, Town Manager. We are here tonight to present for your consideration and adoption the budget for fiscal year 22-23. We have reached this point after months of discussion with the council, dating back to the council retreat in February and March. We also held work sessions with the council in April and May to help us develop a foundation for this budget. I formally presented the manager's recommended budget on May 4th, followed by a public hearing on May 18th, and 2 more work sessions with the council. Included with this item is the budget ordinance, pay plan, fee schedule, and human services funding resolution. Our recommendation for council is to enact the budget ordinance establishing the town budget for fiscal year beginning July 1st of 2022, and to adopt the resolution approving funding for human services agencies as recommended by the Human Services Advisory Board for fiscal year 23. Here are a few points of emphasis in this budget. It continues the recovery and restoration of our community from the COVID-19 pandemic, supports council's strategic goals and priorities, slightly increases the property tax rate from 51.4 cents per $100 of assessed value to 52.2. The 0.8 cents will go to support the increased needs in Chapel Hill Transit. There are a small number of fee schedule changes to ensure we keep up with the rising cost of doing business these days. We have provided a tiered 4% and 5% of market pay adjustment for our employees. There are no significant changes to our core operational services, and there is a sharp focus on climate action, affordable housing and homelessness initiatives, social equity, and infrastructure. There were some changes to the original proposed budget. Some of them include an additional funding for the Interfaith Council and the Partnership to End Homelessness, a reduction in additional funding for vehicle replacement, additional dollars for cultural arts, the addition of an economic development administrator, administrative coordinator position, and the deferral of a compensation analyst position to a future year. The overall budget is $129.3 million, with $74 million dedicated to our general fund. You'll take a look at this next slide. It gives you a sense of where our dollars are being spent. Overall, our public works is at 10%, just a few. Police is at 11%. Our number one investment is in transit. Fire department is at 8%, the general government at 9% as well. And you'll see the debt service payments on our capital projects at 7%. So here are a few of the items that we have invested in. $80,000 in additional dollars for climate action. That raises our climate action fund to $500,000 a year. This current fiscal year that we're in now was the first year of investment at $470,000. We've added another 80 there. We have $100,000 going to assist the downtown partnership for downtown improvements. $125,000 in for bike ped safety improvements, $320,000 for affordable housing performance agreements, an additional $40,000 to cultural arts. We have $379,000 for new positions and $50,000 in parks maintenance, just a few of the new items that we're investing in the fiscal year 23 budget. The fiscal year 22 and 23 budget will help lay the framework for the town's 5-year budget strategy by developing a funding plan to increase the town's investments in key initiatives. We do plan to return to the council in the fall to continue with our in-depth discussion of the 5-year budget strategy with our goal of developing a plan to address the town's significant needs over time. Again, our recommendation is for council to adopt the budget ordinance for fiscal year 23 as it currently stands, and to adopt the resolution approving funding for human services agencies as recommended by the Human Services Advisory Board. I'd also like to take a moment to thank all of our council members for a very robust and productive discussion this budget season. I'd also like to thank the public for its involvement in the development of our budget, and our staff for their hard work in putting together a strong budget that ensures that the delivery of the high quality services that we offer here in Chapel Hill will continue. So with that, I will thank you, Council. Amy Oland, our Director of Business Management, and I will take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you for the hard work and the flexibility and all of the last minute changing of information. So are there any clarifying questions from council at this point? Okay, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on the budget? All right, I bring it back to council. Any final comments? Ms. Anderson?
I really just want to thank all the staff, especially Amy and Maurice, for plodding through. I know we've thrown some curveballs at you. There's been some changes that have been exciting as usual, but thank you for being responsive. And I just know that it's a really heavy lift, and it's an important thing. And it's, you know, we best show our values through how we spend our money. So we really appreciate you helping us to do that and do it so well and effectively. So
thank you.
Yeah, and I know I speak for the entire council that we're all very just grateful to you. So I would and others can certainly say things, but I'll move 09.
Okay. Thank you. Before you do that, I have you down for moving it. We have a hand raised and I have to explain a couple things. So Ms. Miller-Fushi.
Yeah, I just want to say as a newbie, this is the largest budget I've ever had to look at and work through. And it was a lot of work. And I just want to thank my colleagues for all of their support, also the staff for all of the support in helping me work through this. And I just want to say thank you to my colleagues also in community for coming out and advocating and really trying to push forward a budget that's going to really be reflective of our values. So thank you.
On the 09 item, we have one council member who has a conflict of interest. Again, Ms. Miller-Fouché, if you would announce your conflict, please.
Yes, my conflict is again IFC. I'm a part-time employee there, and I also serve on the board of directors for Empowerment Inc.
Thank you. You will need, and you're formally asking us to recuse you. I don't believe we have anyone else in this category at this point in time, unless someone else knows. Any reason? Okay, so I need a formal.
I move to recuse Councilwoman Miller-Fouché from this vote.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Ryan, second by Mr. Nguyen. Roll call vote, please. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Okay, you've been recused from the vote. Is there, and then Ms. Anderson moved 09, which is the budget ordinance.
I second.
Second. Oh, you can have it.
Then second, moved by Ms. Anderson, second by Mr. Parker. We will need a roll call vote. So we'll start that. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. All right.
Resolution
Now,
R8.
not yet. Sorry, you got to wait just a minute, please. All right. On the resolution for the Human Services Advisory Board, we actually have at least 4 council members who have a conflict of interest on this one because they serve on one of the nonprofits receiving monies. As I call your name, you can just welcome to say which board you're on. And if there's one I missed, please let me know. Mr. Parker.
Yes, I serve on the board of OE Enterprises, an organization up in Hillsborough, and so request recusal from this vote.
Okay, Ms. Miller-Fouché.
I recuse myself with IFC as a part-time employee, and Empowerment Inc. I serve on the board of directors.
Okay, Mr. Nguyen.
I think I'm recusing myself because RCP.
Yes, the Refugee Community Project. Yes.
Community partnership. Yes.
Community partner, sorry. And Ms. Berry.
I believe I'm recusing myself because of Hope Renovations Board. And I'm also on, but I don't think that they are receiving Piedmont Health.
It was just Hope Renovations.
It's just Hope Renovations.
Does anyone else that I didn't call out have a conflict of interest from this new law? Okay, so we will need a motion to recuse those 4 members from this vote from one of you who's not needing to be recused.
I'll move that we officially recuse council members Parker, Miller-Fouché, Nguyen, and Berry.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Anderson, second by Ms. Stegman. All right, roll call vote. This will be interesting. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
I think I skip all the way down to Ms. Ryan. Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. So you're recused. Now we would need a motion to pass resolution 9.
I move I think it's R8.
8, sorry.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Ryan, second by Ms. Anderson. I will need a roll call vote again. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Yeah. Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. All right. Motion passes 5-0. So thank you. Well, yes, from the recusals. Okay. Was that understandable for everybody? I think that's the only place we have to do this evening. So thank you to staff for working on all of this and for working out how we could do this voting. And we will look forward, hopefully, to some tweaking from the General Assembly to avoid this situation in the future. But all right. We come up to item number 14, consider approving the town use of ARPA funds and provide feedback on community partner application process. Ms. Polton, are you sharing with us? Or Ms. Oland? Okay.
Yes, I'm pulling up the presentation, but Amy is going to kick us off. So just give me one more second. Hopefully you're seeing the presentation and not my notes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Amy Oland, and I'm the Director of Business Management. I am here tonight along with Sarah Polton, our Special Projects Manager, to give you an update on the American Rescue Plan. Next slide, please. So here's a look at what we intend to cover tonight. First, we will review the funding allocation that we presented at the May 11th work session and where Council gave their general consent to move forward with that particular allocation. We'll then revisit the various town department project categories and we'll note which projects we believe we heard received broad council support at the May 11th work session. We'll then share what is next, both with town department projects and with the community partner application intended to go out over the summer. And as we go through our presentation, we would ask that you please consider whether we captured your project priorities correctly and would like to hear what input you have on the community partner application process. Next slide. So here's a review of the timeline that we had kind of put together related to dispersing ARPA funds. We are just beyond the letter of intent process. Those were due on the 13th, and we discussed those with Council at the June 1st work session. And we hope to move to the project presentation process when Council returns in September. Next slide. So this is the same slide that we put before Council at the May 11th work session. The one change we've made is that we added the Revive dollars that had already been allocated back last spring. So the proposed allocation shows the almost 10.7 million that the town received or will receive. We're due for our second half of the allocation sometime in the next coming weeks. We made one small adjustment to what we shared with you a couple weeks ago, and that's tied to the town facilities category. We increased that allocation by 200,000 and reduced the digital access category based on conversations with Council and tied to specific projects that will go into a little more detail in the coming slides. We discussed the community partner funding last week at the June 1st work session. And at the end of this presentation, we intend to share some more details tied to the proposed application process. Next slide. So here's a list of the projects that we believe we heard strong support for on the May 11th work session, and we have included in with the item a grants project ordinance for your approval tonight to allocate dollars for these 4 projects, which total 3.15 million, so that we can move forward with those 4 projects over the summer. Next slide. So just to do a quick summary of the project categories that we have shared with Council, here's the Parks and Recreation category. We've added 2 projects to this slide since we last presented to Council, and that includes Pickleball, because we received a letter of intent from the Pickleball Association tied to a request from them, and the Teen Center, which received much interest from Council at the May 11th work session. The total of these projects exceeds the 2.5 million that we've tentatively allocated to this category. So we worked with Parks and Recreation to identify 5 projects that could add up to the 2.5 million allocated. Note that the more that we spend on the adaptive playground, the bigger it can be. Also, Chapel Hill Pickleball is promising to match to the 400,000 we've put forward here that would be tied to town ARPA dollars, $400 from their own fundraising. And a complete overhaul of the Teen Center would really be closer to somewhere between $1 and $2 million. So more work would need to be done to get a good cost estimate there. So the amount proposed would really be intended for a short-term upfit. And lastly, the skate park allotment would replace existing structures, but would not expand the facility. Next slide. Based on feedback we heard from Council at the May 11th work session, the project that received the most support was the Morgan Creek Trail Phase 3 East. The total project cost was $4 million, but what we heard support for was to determine how much it would cost to get the project designed, which is estimated to be about $500,000. And this would allow the project to be shovel ready if federal dollars become available for the remaining approximately $3.5 million required to complete that project. Next slide. The top priority project that was identified based on conversations with town departments is the Homestead Aquatic Center HVAC unit. We had $1 million allocated to this category initially, and we've allocated an additional $200,000 that would allow us to move forward with this priority project. If the air units did fail, it would require us to shut down the facility. So this is why we've ranked this project as a top need. Next slide. We heard an interest at the May 11th work session for a downtown-wide strategic plan that would be separate from or in addition to the Rosemary Commons planning. So we don't currently have an estimate on that cost because it'll largely depend on the scope. So this category could come in less than $1 million. But for right now, we've kind of put a hold on this until we can get some more information and we can discuss further with council when we return in September. Next slide. So lastly, the library AV was the one project that we heard strong support for. And so we have recommended that this project move forward with an estimated cost of $300,000. Next slide. And finally, there was an early idea to set aside money for the community to decide on what projects the town should undertake. We recommend that these projects be services or initiatives that the town would perform to address interests that we've heard from the community survey, reduce the reporting burden, and truly test what a future participatory budgeting process could look like. And now I'm going to hand the presentation over to Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The following slides contain next steps for our community partner applications to occur over the summer. We discussed this as part of our budget conversation last week, but we will now affirm the project criteria and give you details on the application process, training for interested applicants, our equity plan, and project scoring rubric. So this is the criteria that you saw last week as part of the letter of intent conversation, including projects being over 50,000, under $1 million, and definitely ARPA eligible. One thing we did hear last week is that you may be interested in funding programs that already existed before the pandemic, but had to expand to meet the needs of those disproportionately affected by COVID. We have modified the criteria to include two types of needs based on that feedback. The first is big, bold, new programs that are not business as usual and do not include staffing or normal operations, as we have discussed. And then the second is a new one based on that feedback from last week, which could be normal operations, but those that the community partner expanded during the pandemic and still will be at that higher level of service once ARPA dollars are dispersed in early 2023. As part of the ARPA application process, we plan to provide training opportunities so that community partners are in a strong and confident position to submit ARPA eligible impactful projects. Shanika Weeks, our DEI officer, and I and Amy have been working really closely together, and Shanika has been designing capacity building workshops already and is thinking about using the town's ARPA funding application as kind of the guinea pig for that. These may include how to complete the town ARPA application, ARPA eligibility criteria, how to report on projects successfully, and designing effective performance measurements. These could also be times for community partners that want to submit projects not included in the letter of intent process or deemed ineligible through that process to workshop their ideas and check for eligibility before completing the full application. So this is how community partner projects will be reviewed. Staff will review for ARPA eligibility, pandemic specificity, and whether the project meets our equity goals, which I'll talk about in a minute. Eligible projects will be sent to a community review team to assess their general merit, whether they benefit those most affected by the pandemic, collaboration opportunities, and how organizations plan to measure success. That team will consist of volunteers from the community, such as People's Academy graduates, potentially town council members if they would like to serve as well, and other community members as identified when we get a little closer. And we'll also include town staff with a high level of awareness of our community partners' work. So to ensure that we are promoting equity in our process, we plan to use an equity scorecard Shanika Weeks developed to compare the relative equity of multiple projects, programs, or services. You can see the categories listed here, which I won't read all the way through, but we will apply this set of categories to each of the ARPA eligible projects. Then each criteria will be ranked and weighted to provide an objective score for each community partner application, and it will be assessed as part of the scoring rubric, which I will show you now. So here is a plan for our scoring rubric. I borrowed the general idea from Durham and how they scored their community projects, but I adjusted it based on feedback we have received from council. You can see that staff will review and what staff will review and then what the larger group will review. Criteria include ARPA eligibility, specificity to pandemic relief, their equity score for each project, whether a project benefits a specific qualified census tract, whether the project benefits a group most negatively affected by COVID, collaboration with other organizations, connection to the target community, and finally impact, their ability to measure their impact. So that concludes the content of our presentation, and here are some next steps. First, we hope to launch the community partner application process in late June or early July. The affordable housing projects, as we discussed last week, will go through the affordable housing application process along with bond and development reserve projects, also going on during the summer concurrently. And then all other partners will proceed with the general ARPA application. Then if approved tonight, departments will move forward executing the 4 projects listed here, which we identified on May 11th as priorities. So tonight, Amy and I are hoping you will approve the grant project ordinance, which is set forth in your agenda so that town departments can start spending that $3.15 million identified on the priority projects. We are also open to your feedback on the community partner application process as we intend to launch that as soon as possible.
Thank you. All right, council members, are there clarifying questions? Okay, Ms. Miller-Fouché, followed by Ms. Ryan, then Mr. Searing, then Mr. Parker.
Thank you for that presentation. Can you explain a little bit more in detail what is meant by liberty as it pertains to the rubric?
Yeah, we get those definitions up for you. So just to talk a little more general about the scoring matrix, it's this pretty detailed document. So I'm just going to give you kind of the explanation for what that section means directly from the document itself. So liberty is here just defined as the extent the program expands or restricts individual rights and choices. Does class affect the choices made for this program? And any other questions more detailed than that, I have promised to send on to Shanika because she is the expert.
Thanks. Also, I'm just going back and looking at the list. Let me go back. Sorry. Trying to find the slide. With pertaining to, okay, I think I lost it. Here it is. The Parks and Rec with Pickleball. I know we received that petition that came forward, but I'm not sure about the consensus. And I'm trying to figure out how that got on the list. All the other items there were discussed in detail for quite some time. And now we have nearly $500,000 with pickleball.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So the Chapel Hill Pickleball actually submitted a letter of intent. So since it was a department project, we didn't include it last week because those were all separate organizations would execute those projects. So we included it this week because they did submit a letter of intent and it would be something the town would execute. That's why it's new here. We mentioned it very briefly last week, so easily could have been overlooked, but that it was a letter of intent that we received as part of the process on May 13th.
And I'll just add, if I may, that the dollars, this is just a recommendation and a one way that we could allocate the Parks and Rec dollars. The only dollars that are actually being put forth to appropriate at this time are for Cedar Falls. So we are not saying that we will move forward with that 400,000. This was just what we thought we heard at the last couple meetings and based on the information we've heard. And we did have conversations with Phil Fleischman based on information he's shared with council last week, and top priorities that he's hearing from community and his department. And so that's kind of how this list came to be. But we are certainly open to bringing this back up and working through this when we come back in September.
Yeah, because I mean, there's some like, in terms of allocation of funds there, you know, the teen center is a priority that we've been talking about. And right now, what has been put there, I know we're not officially allocating that amount, but do you get what I'm saying? Like 150 to nearly $500,000, and then we're not even getting to where we need to be with the teen center. And just kicking that bucket down the road. And so I just want to, again, elevate the teen center and allocations of funds there using this ARPA money and looking at what ARPA money is for and really investing in our youth in that way, making sure that that's a space that's going to be safe, and it wasn't during COVID. And so, yeah, that's really important. Thanks.
Okay, I have Ms. Ryan, then Mr. Searing, then Mr. Parker, then Ms. Berry.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about the library tech upfit? I don't actually remember talking about that as a council priority. So can you just describe a little bit what that would entail?
You want to take this one, Amy? I mean, I know.
I'm happy to. Yeah, I can share what I know. We can get additional information. So this is tied to the technology in the meeting rooms. And my understanding is that the system that exists is very antiquated and will not be able to manage the moving forward combination in-person Zoom meetings for council work sessions or other similar type meetings that are held. And so this is something that our library has been working on looking into over the last year. This was a project that was put forward by the library as one of their department project ideas.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good. Thank you.
okay, yeah.
And then for Sarah, on the rubric under benefits affected communities, the first one talks about 60% AMI. Do all of those categories look at that as well? It just got dropped off the box. Okay.
Absolutely. Nailed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Ran out of space.
Word. We love Word. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Searing, Mr. Parker, then Ms. Berry.
Yeah, I had a couple questions, and the first one is on, again, around the pickleball and the 400,000 inclusion. Now, we've mentioned it several times when we talked about this last time that one attractive thing here is that the pickleball folks have said, well, we can raise $400,000. I kind of see a problem with that. Not that we want to say, well, we don't want private donations, but I do think as we're deciding on how to allocate this money, that if we are going to start to consider the as part of this allocation process, the ability of groups, of certain projects to raise private funding, then we either need to be very clear about that and make that part of the process, or we need to not take that into account. Because of course, there are some projects that will have a harder time raising private funds than other projects. And that I think is probably not the way that we want to go. But if we do, I personally do not want to go that way, but if we, and I'm happy to allocate money for the pickleball, but I want to do it in, not as part of not depending on what the project is. So I just hope that you all would think about that a little bit, because we could run into a situation where we have the skate park, for example, my thing where there's a big fundraising drive to raise money for the skate park, because if that means that you can get $500,000. So, but have you all thought about that at all, or was that just not part of the thinking yet? I'm sure you have been.
Yeah, I mean, I can just say no. I mean, we had not really thought in depth about that. Really, kind of came up kind of last minute, and so we brought it forward here because, as Sarah mentioned, a letter of intent was submitted, and it has kind of risen to the interest of a lot of people. It was very highly, rated in the community survey. They, so we wanted to make sure it was identified here as an interest. But I definitely understand what you're saying in terms of thinking about equity and how that plays through all of the ARPA funding. And so I think it's a very good concern to bring up, and we will make sure that we include that in our conversations as we think about what comes back before council.
Okay, yeah, it's popular. And then my other question is, I mean, pickleball is popular, no question about it, and happy. I think we should be thinking about it, putting money into it, but just not, we need to make that decision separately from these private money. The other thing is with the skate park. I mean, I think my guess is 75,000 would not go very far, and probably most of the folks who use the skate park would see that as a waste of money versus creating actually a modern skate park. So I think we should probably put that in the the hopper. I think just spending 75,000 on replacing the boards, unless it's the exposed nails and rusty screws or whatever, which are obviously a safety concern, but because the total cost of replacing the park is probably close to the adaptive playground cost, or maybe even more. So I just would go back and look at that line item too, and think about what where it should be. And I don't know was that the cost you're estimating to replace all the wood in the park?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically replace the pieces that are there, not expand.
Yeah. I think it would, that would not be seen as moving things forward there. I think it would be. Anyway, those were my two questions. So, but thank you.
Okay, Mr. Parker, Ms. Berry, and then Ms. Stegman.
Yeah, first I want to support Adam's, Councilmember Searing's thoughts about sort of pay as you go for priorities. I mean, it seems really to contravene our equity goals in a big way. So I think we really need to take a much harder look at that. I mean, I'm glad to take money, but we have to think about how we do that in a way that doesn't subvert what we're trying to do from an equity perspective. Regarding the equity, is there any notion of how we're going to evaluate the projects in toto? In other words, one might decide that rather than having each project meet equity goals, and I'm just throwing this out as a possibility, as long as the sum total of all of the projects meet equity goals, we might be willing to have some that are less, highly rated in equity than others, but looking at the totality of all the projects to see if in toto, our, let's say, $1 million or so in community spending, as well as the other money we're spending as a town, is truly advancing equity. So I would think about, is there a way to go back, and once you've made at least a tentative project selection, look at the whole spend in toto and see if that's meeting equity and other goals. And then the last question I would ask, it sort of contravenes some of the things we just said, but in a way it doesn't. In terms of the turf for Cedar Falls, I've been told that there are folks who might be willing to pay for some of that. And at least in this case, we've made the decision absent that funding, right? But now there may be some funding that can be used there. So ought we to investigate that sooner rather than later to see if in fact that's a realistic possibility, and thereby stretch our ARPA funds further than where we are now?
Councilmember Parker, we are having conversations with those associations, and there's that possibility that we could save some of the ARPA dollars. I would ask council to allocate them first, and then we can go back and have that conversation just so that we can start that process. I will also point out that if they were to provide some funds up front, there would be the expectation of these soccer clubs to have a reduction in their fees as they move forward. That's what they've done with previous agreements with the town. So that would be a hit on our revenue down the road. So just keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Berry, then Ms. Stegman.
Thanks. I appreciate Councilmember Searing's comment about the equity. As we consider, staff, I appreciate you bringing this up for us to discuss. As we consider as a body, do we want to have that project elevated merely because they have offered, this group has offered to pay for it? That I agree with my colleagues who have commented on that. It does not speak to equity. It speaks to privilege. Those who can pay for it jump in line. So we really need to be cautious about that. With regards to what you've asked of us, you've presented this, but then you've asked us to go back to this one piece, which is 3.15 million, where we allocate dollars for the Cedar Falls artificial turf, the East Morgan Creek Trail design, to have that ready to go should it be, the HVAC system, which is an absolute necessity, and then the library AV system. Even though we didn't discuss that at length, I am supportive of all of that, along with the other three. So I'm supportive of it. I do.
Is there a clarifying question? That's what we are.
Oh, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Thank you for keeping me straight here, Mayor. Clarifying question is that the only thing that we are moving forward on tonight is that 3.15 million, and then the rest we can discuss in September, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Good. Ms.
Question
Stegman?
answered.
I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Nguyen, did you have any questions? You popped onto my second screen, so I don't have your.
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple. I wanted to know if the $75,000 for the skate park actually could help with redesign. I know that if we move to a concrete park, it would have to be redesigned. Is that correct? And that maybe design dollars and then hopefully future fund balance over, just things like that. So I didn't know if that was an option for consideration, and I'd like you to check into seeing what it would cost for redesign. I had the same question about the soccer monies that they had said they would put up front, but I like the attitude that we will keep moving that conversation forward and see what happens. I know they liked the cap rate just because it was a predetermined rate as our prices went up. And I know there's some disagreement on the rates of with lights and without lights. So I'll let the staff work that out as me. And just a clarifying, I guess I'll save it for comments. I see the equity issue a little differently on this one with pickleball, just because of the amount of people, but we can come back for comments for that. So I'll do that. And then again, only moving forward on these $3.15 million, and then coming back to make sure that we talk about the others as we get more information. All right, so I put it out there for the public. Anyone from the public wishing to make comments on this item? Ms. Bailey, are you wishing to make comments on this item?
I am.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I had the opportunity to be with you all as you did a discussion, brief discussion on the Arpa money last council meeting. And I want to thank you all for the robust discussion that you're having. And Sarah, thank you, and Amy and Sharika for the work that you're doing. I do have one comment though. I've been around Chapel Hill a long time. I would call myself a lifelong resident at this time. I am very concerned about the teen center. I am very concerned that it can be that place for our young people to be and call a place for them to gather. And it is not, it's far from that, but this is not just happening. So I am appealing tonight that more dollars go towards the teen center and we really fix that place up so that if any other situation like COVID, and I think I heard Councilperson Miller Fishi say that it wasn't available during COVID. I for years have wanted that teen center to be a beacon for Chapel Hill, for our young adults. And so I am pleading and just asking, really consider 150,000 is not enough. Let's stop kicking the rock down the road. Let's claim this and make it something we can be proud of and a place for our young people to come to and grow up in. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make comments on this item? I will remind folks, we didn't have any of our town facilities open during COVID. It was really hard on everybody. So, okay, I will bring it back for comments from council, and then we will look to see if we have a motion to move forward on the 3.15 million. Ms. Anderson, then Mr. Parker.
Yeah, thank you. I do have a couple questions that have been raised partially from Ms. Bailey's comments. I guess what I'm wondering is, what I remember is I was one of the people who felt really strongly about the teen center a few years ago. And then we heard from our staff that they had done a lot of work actually talking to teens, and teens just, the teens didn't really want, that wasn't a huge interest, which I thought was surprising, but I think the work was really centered on hearing the voices of young people. And so it wasn't for us as adults to decide where teens wanted to be or what made sense for them. So I'm just wondering, what are, maybe there's just updated information that I don't have, or things have changed, or maybe we're assuming that COVID has changed something. And I'm okay with there being new information. I just haven't heard anything since the last time. I think it was our library staff and maybe our housing and community staff work together. I just remember being surprised and being interested, but also really wanting to respect the youth voice that we were hearing. So I'm just trying to get a sense from our staff of where things are. Is there updated information from impacted teens?
Yeah, I don't believe we have updated information from impacted teens. We have not engaged in that because of the pandemic. And of course, this was raised again just a couple months ago to take another good look at the teen center. I think there's no question the teen center needs to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. What that looks like, I'm not sure just yet. We have some really good ideas that I think, quite frankly, we should go back and talk to the teens about and say, we've heard these are things that you're interested in, and we'd like to consider moving forward with it. Give us give us some understanding of whether or not you accept that and believe that's the direction we should go in, and get some good input from them. And I think we should work with the teens in our community to identify what those needs are and be responsive to that. But there's no question the teen center needs to be addressed in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add that a lot of what the teen center needs is structural. So they could leave it painted the same way they have it, the same art on the wall, the same content in terms of games and what they want to play with, but literally the lights don't work in some of the rooms. Like the plumbing is not operational in some places. So it's things like that. Is my understanding of Parks and Rec's interest here is not changing the things maybe central to the kids, but making it safer and more operational.
And when we come back in the fall with council, we can also set aside some additional funds to address the needs of the teen center as well.
And some of the results from all the work we did with partners with teens and talking to the teens is made improvements with the library services, with Parks and Rec services. But it was interesting, the teens were not enamored of the actual place itself because of the position it was. They wanted somewhere else. And so it was like, okay, so do we spend money fixing this up when they don't want to be there? Or do we look at it for the new MSC building? Do we look at it somewhere else? Old Town, what do we, maybe there's another, so I think that needs to be looked at as well, because the teens were like, it's not conducive to where we want to be in that space. So that was interesting too. So part of the decision not to spend a lot of money fixing it up was because they didn't want to be there. And then COVID hit and we kind of got distracted with everything else going on. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that all makes a lot of sense to me. And I like the idea of, number one, going back to stakeholders. I think that's really important for us. I think, I don't want us to assume what's good for teens or what teens want. And I think this space is actually in a beautiful building, and we need to certainly not just let it fall apart. But I think I would like us to take that broader look of, what actually makes sense based on the interest. And maybe we needed to understand an updated interest of our young people. And like you said, maybe it's at the MSC, maybe it's something else at the library that addresses. So we do, we have tried to do that, but it's not necessarily what the adults in the room thought it would be. So I think just being thoughtful and intentional, and not just assuming that the teens need to stay in that space. Or if there is something they really want in that space, then what does that look like? I think that would be a very valuable use of time. I think otherwise, my comments are that I like the I like the process for the community budgeting piece. It looks good to me. And I think that the things that are on the list for immediate action are things that I think we had a lot of agreement on. I'm good with them. So I say go forth and let's figure out if there's additional things that we need to do for our teens, but maybe it's not that space. So thank you for all your continued work on this.
Okay, let's see if I can remember then what we had. We had Mr. Parker, then Mr. Searing, then Ms. Miller-Fouché, then Ms. Stegman.
Yeah, I think so. Overall, I think the overall allocation makes sense for now. As the initial tranche of money that we're at, the 3 and change out of the 10 in total, I think makes sense, and I certainly support that. Not to terribly beat a dead horse, but in terms, I think what we need to do is sort of 2 things. One, there's just some short-term stuff that's got to get fixed in the teen center. I have no idea what it costs, but the place is a mess. I mean, and we're not going to get folks out of there in the next year or 2 years or 3 years. So we need to really just put some money in to make it safe, and both COVID and non-COVID reasons. And then I think whether it's with Arpa money or some other source of money, really step back and develop a comprehensive view of what we want to do for our teens in this community. And it may be a physical facility, it may be a collection of programs scattered in different places. It could be any one of a number of things. I have no idea what it would look like, but I think we really just need to put some time and money into figuring out what is our strategy for, addressing the needs of teens in this community. And then whether it's fixing, building, investing in programs, investing in partnerships, I don't know, but I think we really need to finally come up with a plan. We've been talking about it since I've been on council, and we've done effectively nothing, and I think it's time to move forward.
Okay, Mr. Searing, then Ms. Miller-Fouché, then Ms. Stegman.
Yeah, just on the teen center, I'll just, as a parent of a current teenager, and I've got a lot of teenagers hanging around my house sometimes and friends, and they were spending a lot of time at the skate park, unsurprisingly, in downtown, but not at the center. So, and that of course is one, out of a town of 60,000. So I think I would just second, I think we really need to go out and ask these folks what they want, ask teenagers what they want. And if it's somewhere else, I like that idea that it may be that just moving it to a different location, that could be a thing to do. So I really second that. I'm going out to ask our kids what they're interested in. The other thing that I just want to comment on, and which I didn't before, is the Morgan Creek Trail design came in at $500,000. And that's an awful lot of money for design. And I don't pretend to be the biggest expert in this, but I am a little bit of an expert in building other kinds of trails. And honestly, if we took that $500,000, we could probably go ahead and run a trail by Morgan Creek for most of the way that we want to do this if it was a natural surface trail. And so we could have the trail without the design. And I'd also point out that that $500,000 is half what it would take to build a modern skate park. So that's an awful lot of money, I think, for doing the design. And that gives me pause about the 3.15 million. The other stuff I think is fine. I'm totally down with the artificial turf. I'll just, read, our Parks Committee went ahead and said, they want the artificial turf in Cedar Falls. The inclusive playground, is something that's top for our next start of things to do. The skate park reconstruction was top, and the teen center improvements. So I'm fine with all the first set of projects, although I really think we should reevaluate the 500,000 but that's one part I'm not fine about. But the other three I'm okay with. And I would look forward to discussing more about our second set of priorities.
Before I move on, Mr. Searing, I'll share with you on our MPO briefing that we had yesterday. We talked about this, and unfortunately, to be shovel ready on a project like this, you have to get Army Corps of Engineer, FEMA, all these regulations in order to be considered shovel design ready. And even if you do build a natural surface trail, you have to have all those things delineated out, and that is the actual projected cost of doing the entire trail design. We hope it would come in a little bit less than that, but current figures say because of all the engineering work that has to be looked at in order to be submitted, in hopes of getting a grant for funding it, and whether we put it in as natural surface or we have to go through that process. So at some point, those funds would have to be spent for design before we could move forward at all. So because we had the same concerns you did and brought them to the briefing where we talked it through. So that's the information to share with you on that. So.
Well, I still think if you took that 500,000, I bet we could run most of the trail. We wouldn't be allowed to. I know we're just have to agree to disagree.
Well, it is the rules and regulations for trails. So yes. Okay. I think it was Ms. Miller-Fouché, followed by Ms. Stegman, followed by Ms. Berry and Ms. Ryan.
Yeah. So I'm following suit with my colleagues here with projects that I would like to see moving forward now. The Cedar Falls, those 4 that are listed there. I give a thumbs up to that for sure. And just to revisit the teen center, what we heard from teens was reflective of pretty much what we've given them. And, I think it's contradictory to think that teens want to be in a space that hasn't been invested in and has been neglected for years. And so I think we always have to let our youth voices lead, and they have to be centered as to what they want, but we can't expect them to want more than what we've given them either. And so I definitely want to see more investment there. In terms of that space, we know that space is scarce in this town. And so what I've heard from staff who work closely with teen programming is that they don't want to give up that space because space is scarce. And that's all they have right now. And we haven't bothered to take the time to find anything else for our teens. Now, having said that, I know that teen programming isn't relegated to the teen center. But the teen center is part of that ecosystem, and we need to make sure that we're investing in it. And it needs to be top-notch, a top-notch place for our teens to be able to go in, something that we as a town can be proud of. And so whatever surveys were done in years past, I agree we need to revisit that, because those teens then probably aren't teens now. They've probably moved on and are in college. But if we're going to have a teen center, it needs to be appropriate and reflective of the values that we say that we have for our teams, and need to be reflective of something that they can be proud of being a part of. So really want to see some funds, more done there, so that minimally, they should be able to go and use the bathroom and have proper lighting in that space. But that's the floor for me, and we should be reaching much higher.
Ms. Stegman, Ms. Berry, Ms. Ryan.
Okay. Thanks. Just brief comments. I agree on the priorities that you've identified to go ahead and move forward with. I know this will be for further discussion in the fall, but I do, I think we have a tendency as a group, there's so many priorities that we end up, as we've talked about, giving a little bit of money to a lot of things and then not feeling good about any of it. And I think that's what, some of my colleagues are getting at. And I would like to see us, and it's hard, it's very hard to choose to fund some things and not fund others, but I would rather see us do a really good job with a fewer number of things. So that'll be for the fall, but if it's the teen center and skate park and nothing else, so that we do them well and make them, worthy of their users, rather than, kind of a little bit here and a little bit there, to spread it around. So that's on my mind. And then I also just want to add on to thank Councilmember Searing for his comment about the pickleball match funding. And I do agree, and hadn't thought about it in that way and should have, but I do see that as a significant equity issue, and you should be able to kind of buy your place in line. We've got so many priorities and so many great ideas and needs, and pickleball is one of them. But it needs to be considered within that list, not just sort of passing by. And here's the council count. So that's it. Thank you for your work on this.
Okay. Ms. Berry, then Ms. Ryan.
Thanks. Okay. I'll restate what I said in the question portion, that I support this allocation of 3.15 million. It does give me pause about that $500,000 design, but if there are regulations that we have to adhere by, so be it. I do think it's worth it. That's been something that we had looked to do already, I believe, when we've run out of bond money. So I like the idea of honoring that promise. And then moving forward, so yes to those four and that amount. Moving forward, I would like to that we as a body look at the rest, or look at all of it through the same lens that we're going to be judging the community submissions on. How are we allocating the money? Are we holding ourselves to the same standards that we're asking our community, where we're going to ask of our community? So that's just something for us for future thought. Revisit, let's see, as we talk about the teen center, I really appreciate the discussion that's going on with this. I have not visited it yet, so that's on my to-do list. But as we revisit with teens who weren't teens at the time that we last did this study, let's look at our preteens. I think we should engage those who are about to be our tweens, our teens, and then also those who were teenagers. So that window where we can have that look of into the future, those who are experiencing teen land right now and those who have been through it, and they can reflect and share. I think that would be worth our while. To Councilmember Miller Fouchy's point, if we're going to have a place, and this also goes to Councilmember Searing's, if we're going to have a place that we say is for our community, then it needs to be worthy of our community. And what I'm hearing right now is that neither of these places are. I do want us, as we look at how we're going to invest, I should say, how we're going to invest the remaining ARPA dollars, that we think about how are we investing these dollars? Are they for show, or are they to really reinforce what this community is about? Do we really value what we've built already? And can we be promised, or can we be entrusted to value what we build tomorrow? So thank you.
Ms. Ryan?
Hi, thank you. So first of all, I support the choices for the first phase of funding. In terms of the teen center, I agree with comments that we need to plan strategically and more comprehensively about that. I'd love to go out and when we come back and have those discussions to get more information from our teens, and maybe as Ms. Barry suggested, from others who are recent former users or potential future users on what we need. I think it makes sense. We can't have a facility where the plumbing doesn't work. That's just not okay. So we need to, certainly while we're making bigger plans, make sure that it's operational and decent. I know that I've talked to Parks and Rec staff, has talked about transitioning that smaller space eventually to an art, music, maker space and kind of being focused there, and then moving other programs to another facility. So I think we're going to have to start thinking a little bigger than just this place as we plan strategically. So I think the MSC may be an interesting option for putting space, especially if we've got more room for outdoor recreation there as well. So just this is all going to evolve, but I would like to somehow get more information, more surveying done, and see what the kids really want. So as we have discussions about moving forward, how to spend this money, I do want to also keep in mind to think about the ages that we're serving and that we're reaching all the different parts of our community. So that brings me to the inclusive playground. I'm very happy that we're starting to get funding for that. I really would like to see an inclusive playground splash pad combination. I think we can do that for well under the 1.75 million that we're now talking about. We just don't need to spend that much money. I had friends who were just in Utah. There was a town of 1,700 that had a splash pad. The town of 5,000 in New Mexico, where my son lives, they have a splash pad. It's just not, it does not have to be the Taj Mahal of splash pads. It has to be a place where people can take their toddler on a really hot morning and they can run around in a puddle and dump water. And, it does not have to be super elaborate. So, and especially if we're doing that with the inclusive playground, then we're hitting that whole other age group from the very, very youngest kids up to them when we start talking about kids transitioning to skate parks and teen centers and that kind of thing. So I really would like a rethink of how we're looking at those two projects. And I think we can do it for a lot less money than we're talking about here. So, and especially too, given that it's an inclusive playground, I think that with our new grant writer on board, we could very successfully raise money to help us pay for that for a facility like that. So in terms of pickleball, I hear everybody about not buying the place in line. I agree with that. I think we also do have to recognize, though, that it's a sport that we're greatly underserving in town. There are a lot of people who do it, and it's very popular. It's great recreation. It was very popular during the pandemic. So I have heard support for it on council. So I would like to still keep it on the table as all these discussions proceed and keep it part of our strategic planning moving forward, whether it's with ARPA dollars, other money, a future bond, however we decide to do it. And on the community partner funding, I generally agree with it. On page 198 of the packet, you talked about big, bold ideas. And I think it was Councilmember Stegman last time who talked about really appreciating things that are new and innovative, but also we do have some very valuable things that are working well, and that we shouldn't punish success. That if we do have good proposals for people who are doing good work now and want to extend that or want to keep it, that shouldn't knock them out of the competition. I agree, not staffing and operational needs. I think that's a smart decision, but I think we should just broaden a little bit there. But otherwise, job well done. Thank you. It's fun to spend all this money. So.
Mr. Nguyen, did you have any comments to make?
Nothing new to add to the convo. I agree with the items presented that we're moving forward on tonight.
To the teen center item, I do want to see some more engagement. As Councilmember Barry said, and at the very least, I mean, we don't even have stalls in the bathroom. I mean, the place is beyond ancient. So I think it's well overdue for at least, at the very least, some structural upgrades to make it inhabitable.
Okay. I'm going to bring my comments in. Ms. Anderson, did you have something quick?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just forgot something. I put pickleball out of my mind. I definitely understand the concern about not paying your way to the front of the line. I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess my question in this case is that what's happening here? Because
I was going to talk to that. So if you will grant me permission to do that at this point, I can share. I understand your concerns about thinking that they trying to buy their place, but I will tell you that in meeting with them, I explained that we had a lot of needs and a lot of dollars, and that if they tried to apply, they wanted to apply for $1 million to build a pickleball center because of all the people wanting to play. And I suggested that we weren't going to have that kind of funding to go towards something like that, and suggested that if they could fundraise, that maybe we could do something that would match that, what they could do. Do we have a price in mind? No one really has all that information yet. So Parks and Rec staff is looking at, what do they do? This sport is a very inclusive sport, any age, any range. We have a lot of seniors playing it. They welcome anybody. The group runs it. There's no fees. It's not a club. The group runs it, trains anyone that wants to come, loans equipment to anyone that wants to come. And they're trying to expand because they're overcrowded. There's too many people trying to play on the size courts we have. So I suggested they put out there a match, that they say, we're willing to help support this because we can help find funding. They don't have it right now, but they said they would try if the town was willing to consider that. And so I'm sorry, I suggested they go that route, not so that they were buying a place in line, so they were reducing the amount of ARPA funds to be used for doing something like this, because I don't think we're going to we have a lot of Parks and Rec needs out there. I will tell you though, there are more individuals playing pickleball than we have in baseball and basketball combined, and even in soccer at this point in time, not combined with all that. But so it's interesting that we have a large number of people playing. They were trying to find a solution to be helpful, not to jump the line or buy a way in. They were trying to find a way to be helpful and partner. So I know we're not deciding this tonight, but I suggest to you that you maybe think about it in a different term to see if that makes any sense. I also want to say I'm very hopeful that we will have some overage in our fund balance again. We're in a good place at this point in time with our fund balance from overage last year, with our budget in really good shape that we just passed, with our increase in revenues and with our ARPA dollars. And I think what the council needs to do is really figure out all the projects it would like to see. I agree with Ms. Stegman, a little bit here and there is just not cutting it, but what can we do? And I agree, we need to fix things that already exist, but they have to be designed, and that takes time and that takes dollars. And how do we make it all work, and what's the timeline look like for that? So I just encourage you to think about things differently. I agree this teen center should be shored up, but I also want to go back and talk with the teens. They were very adamant. They didn't want one center, because we talked about building a whole new facility, and they were like, not what we want. We want to have some activities at the community center. We want some activities at the library. We want to be welcome in other places. We want some programming around teen desires. So that was it. Like Ms. Anderson said, it was actually very surprising what they told us. And we had a lot of focus groups of teens, of different groups of teens who are willing to speak up and say what they really wanted. So, but it's inexcusable to have lights that don't work and things like that. We need to fix that. That I agree. That's just whatever. So I'm in agreement with the 3.15, and I think we have a lot more on our agenda this evening. If we're just deciding this piece, can we move forward on that? And hope that we will come back with some more information.
Mayor, I just want to add.
I have Ms. Stegman's hand up, please.
Oh, okay, great. Because I don't want to.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly clarify that in my comments around the equity issue, I was not in any way saying the pickleball community was being sneaky or trying, manipulative. I think it's for us to assess where we are, how we're prioritizing. That's the equity to me. I certainly don't want it interpreted that there was any thought that they were trying to be sneaky or something like that. So
I mean, like I said, they were trying to find a path that might work.
I think it's very well intentioned. I don't think they've done anything wrong. It's for us to have that lens, though, I think.
Thank you. Ms. Berry, really quickly, we need to move on.
Right. I also want to add on to that, and Councilmember Searing said this, it's if we do encourage a group to fundraise in order to be considered, we should make sure that everyone knows that that is something that will help them with their project. And so that's another piece of where equity comes in, that type of, and I know you didn't do this out of, but we have to be mindful of who gets the information and who gets the consideration.
Agreed.
That's the equity.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, we can come back to this and see where we are, and nobody even has any costs on any of this stuff too. All right, do we have a motion to move forward with the proposed plan of $3.15 million?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Anderson. Roll call vote, please. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Miller-Fouché.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan, there you went.
Aye.
There. Mr. Searing.
I'm right here. Didn't go anywhere.
Now y'all pop all the time, and I'm like, I know you alphabetically, but I like to see you that you're here.
And Ms.
Mr. Searing,
Anderson.
sorry, did I hear you? Mr. Searing, you said aye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And the mayor says aye as well. Thank you very much.
Ms. Anderson.
On it.
I skipped you. Okay. All right. It's an evening. All right. Thank you all. Motion passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item, number 15. Consider closing the legislative hearing and consider an application for conditional zoning for Peach Apartments at 107 Johnston Street. And I will share it as my understanding that we don't have any conflicts of interest on rezoning issues, so we are good to move forward.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I have a short presentation on the conditional zoning, and we have a applicant on hand for any questions that you may have, but it's my understanding that they're not preparing a presentation for you tonight. So again, this is a conditional zoning for Peach Apartments. It's a little under 1 acre, currently a vacant lot that will be converted into 10 affordable housing units. You heard this at a legislative hearing on May 4th. There have been no adjustments or changes to this plan since then. There is one proposed modification to the plan that is a 7-foot, 2-inch setback into the 10-foot street setback for pickup regarding ride sharing, micromobility, and things like that. Well, not micromobility, but paratransit, sorry. Staff's recommendation tonight is to close the legislative hearing, adopt the resolution of consistency, and enact Ordinance A approving the application. And thank you.
Thank you. Bring it back to full screen. Council members, any clarifying questions? Ooh, okay. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? All right, I bring it back to council. Comments or close the public hearing?
Let's close the public hearing. We love it. We love it. We love it.
I second.
I'm going to let it be moved by Ms. Anderson, second by Ms. Stegman, so that we don't have perceive any conflicts of any kind, just in case. To close the public hearing, I will need a roll call vote, please. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Double aye.
Ms. Miller-Fouché.
Triple aye.
Mr. Parker. We're getting high dice here.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Next motion.
Move the resolution of consistency.
Second.
Okay, sorry, I missed the second. It was Ms. Stegman and Ms. Berry. She wants a second in there. Okay, we got that. All right. Resolution of consistency. Roll call vote again, please. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Miller-Fushi.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. One more, folks.
What's the last one? I already forgot. Sorry.
I move ordinance A.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Berry. Okay, here we go. And we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Miller-Fushi.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Congratulations. Thank you. We're excited about your project. Move forward. There we go. Seafield Post and Mr. Gerlitz. Well, Dolores is not happy about this. So all right, there we go. Best of luck. And let's hope construction prices come down instead of going up all the time. So here we go. All right. Thank you very much. Next moves item number 16, open a public hearing to consider a request to close an unimproved and unpaved portion of Stinson Street public right of way. Do we have Mr. Roberts with us? Is that who's doing this?
Yes, can you see my screen?
We can see your screen. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, good. Good evening, and thank you for letting me come speak to you this evening. My name is Chris Roberts, and I'm your manager of engineering and infrastructure. Tonight, I'm going to be going to present to you a request to close a portion of the public right-of-way of Stinson Street. There are 8 slides and should take approximately 5 minutes to go through. So I'll start with a recommendation that the council open and close the public hearing and consider closing a portion of the public right-of-way of Stinson Street and adopt a resolution to permanently close this public right-of-way. So I just want to take a minute to talk about the right-of-way closure process. We follow NCGS 168-299, that's North Carolina piece of legislation that was created to give local governments a framework to process a public right-of-way closure request like this. So the main points of the legislation are hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution to close the public hearing or public right-of-way, a public communication requirements, recommended subdivision of any closed right-of-way land to fronting adjacent property owners, requires all fronting property adjacent property owners who will be receiving land to pay for survey and recordation of plats, and it lays out an appeals process. So where's this location? And I have a more zoomed in slide here in a minute that'll show you a closer map of this, but as you can see over here is Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. There's North Columbia Street. Stinson Street is right here and it bends back around to Isley Street, and then Longview is up here. And by the way, Town Hall is just off the map, but it's down here below Stevens Street. And of course, the subject right-of-way that is requested to be closed is right here in between the 2 Lawler properties. So where are we at with this? As you can see, the right-of-way closure process began with a request to call for a public hearing on April 27th. Tonight staff are recommending to open and close the public hearing, and if the council so chooses to take action on this request. Your decision should be on the question of whether the closing would be detrimental to the public's interests or the property rights of any individual. Again, this is per NCGS 168-299. So a little bit zoomed in here. Again, here's Stinson Street that runs along here. And the little piece of public right-of-way is right here. It's almost an extension of Stinson Street. And as you can see, the 2 fronting property owners are the only 2 that are fronting them are owned by the requester, who was Lawler. The issues are, of course, the closure request is for the unimproved and unpaved portion of Stinson Street per the map that I've shown before. This is requested by the property owner who owns the only 2 fronting properties of this public right-of-way, which again is Lawler. The closing of the subject public right-of-way will not deny access to any adjacent properties. There have been no objections to date received for this request. And neither the town nor Wassa have a need for this subject public right-of-way area. Going back to staff recommendation is, staff's recommendation is that the council open and close the public hearing and consider closing a portion of the public right-of-way of Stinson Street as shown on the previous maps. And of course, adopt a resolution to permanently close this right-of-way area.
All right. Any other presentation material? That's it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Any clarifying questions from council? I'll just ask Chris, this is a steep property right there. Isn't the transition right there kind of sloped?
It does behind there, drop down towards him. Okay.
Okay, so it's unlikely a street would ever have been built there anyway.
Yeah. It would be very difficult.
Okay. Is any member of the public wishing to speak on this item? Okay, bring it back to council for any.
Close the public hearing.
You don't even want comments first. Ms. Anderson, and moved by Ms. Anderson, second by Ms. Stegman to close the public hearing. Are there any comments before we vote on this? Okay, then I will take a roll call vote, please. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Miller-Fushi.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well.
I'll move we approve the closure of the right of way on Stinson Street.
Second.
The move by Ms. Anderson, second by Ms. Berry. Any comments? All right, roll call vote. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Miller-Fushi.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. We appreciate, and Mr. Norris there. All right. Wow, y'all are doing well. That brings us to item number 17. Consider the library internet use policy and internet filtering. Welcome, Megan and Susan Brown. I saw you earlier. There you are. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay? Great. Give me just a second to get my screen share going. Can you see my screen?
No.
No.
Not yet.
All right. You can tell I haven't presented to council in a while.
It's in your notes form.
Thank you.
There you go. Looks good.
All right. Let me see if I can get my notes up. I'm sorry. I want to do, nope. Well, I'm just going to wing it without notes. How's that, y'all? So good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Susan Brown, Director of the Chapel Hill Public Library. Presenting with me tonight is Megan Rosen, our Assistant Director. Tonight, we're going to present to you about 10 slides, which will take about 10 minutes on the library's internet filtering policy and our SIPA compliance. We'll first talk to you about what SIPA is. Then we'll talk to you about some of the previous debates on this act. We'll talk to you about the most recent working group that we've had formed. And then finally, we'll close with a resolution for you to consider taking action on tonight. So first, what is SIPA? SIPA is the Children's Internet Protection Act. It was passed in 1999 in the earliest days of broad public adoption of the web and the internet in everyday life. Oh, those many years ago. The point of SIPA, it's a federal act, was to prevent kids from accessing pornography and other explicit visual content at their schools and at their libraries. What SIPA requires is really these three things. And backstep here, it also tied federal funding for technology funding to libraries and schools becoming compliant. So the act itself requires schools and libraries that wish to be eligible for federal funding to do these three things. One is to adopt an internet safety policy. that includes a technology protection measure, AKA filtering. And then finally, to have a public notice or meeting regarding becoming compliant with SIPA. So those are the three basic tenets of this act. At that time, soon after 1999, most or many public libraries and schools became SIPA compliant. And ever since then, this has been a point of debate in both fields. In 2001, the ALA and the ACLU sued over this act. It went up to appeal to the Supreme Court in 2003, and the court held that SIPA was a constitutional measure. And they also pointed out that that it was reasonable because public libraries do not include pornography in their print collections, and it's a reasonable thing to say we will prevent pornography from coming into libraries this way. Locally, there was consideration by council in 2017. The library, when we were ineligible for much funding for technology from the feds, we brought this to council. And council decided at the time not to change our policy, in part because of concerns of over-filtering and preventing access to certainly kids who might be doing searches on sexual preferences or gender identity or sexual identity. I will note that at the time in 2017, we did not actually look at filtering software solutions. And that was one of council's concerns, was that you all did not get to see what a software solution would look like. So since 2017, federal funding for technology for libraries has only increased. And these are just a few of the sort of evergreen sources, those first two, the LSTA Act and E-rate. But also since COVID, this federal pipeline of funding, much like Arpa and CARES, has also opened up for libraries and tech projects. And that's the ECF, or the Emergency Connectivity Fund, and then the ADAPTS funding from the state. And there's more coming down the pike. So these are federal funds for technology and often for digital inclusion and equity that are open to libraries like us, but we are not eligible for because of our SIPA status. So that's why we, with the board, created a SIPA working group to look at this issue once again. I'm going to let Megan take it over from here and talk you through the work of this group.
Thanks, Susan. So in January of 2022, library staff connected with members of the Library Advisory Board and the town's Technology Solutions Department to talk about these things and to explore how we might address the concerns that were raised in 2017. The first thing we set out to do was to identify shared values and interests and to define filtering requirements and compare, and then we went on to compare filtering products. And then once we had done that, we conducted some side-by-side testing. Right. Thank you. And we really quickly came to the realization that what we had here is a case of classic competing values and interests. We do, of course, value intellectual freedom. We do want to prohibit pornography from being viewed at the public library, and we do need funding for technology. So we went on to consider how we might balance these interests and find a filtering solution that would meet our needs and council's interests. We said any filtering solution that we consider would need to be something we could default to minimum filtering. It has to have a very light touch. Staff would need to be able to configure it easily and quickly. Staff would need to be able to quickly override it if any adult came to us and said, we don't want to be using a filter on our search right now. The software would need to be easy for us to administer, and ideally it would run reports on a regular basis that staff could review so that we could see what had been filtered out and if things had been over filtered or filtered and they shouldn't have been, we could configure the software to not do that in the future. So after considering several potential software solutions, we narrowed our focus to one particular solution, and it happens to be the software platform that's used by our peers in Orange County. And they report being very satisfied with it and their ability to use it to meet their community needs. And they can run regular reports. They haven't had any complaints from users and are rarely, if ever, asked to override the filter. Once we narrowed it down to that particular software solution, we did some side-by-side testing. So we came up with a list of 10 identical searches on information related to health, well-being, and sexual identity. Here are some examples of the searches that we conducted. And we did the searches on machines that had the filter on and machines that had the filter turned off. And after doing these real-world searches, we found out that this particular filtering platform did not over filter. It did block XXX sites from loading when the filter was in place, but it did convey text information on all of the searches that we conducted. And in short, it really successfully met the requirements that the working group had laid out as essential in order to meet our interests in not over filtering. And now I'll let Susan talk a little bit more about policy implications.
Thanks, Megan. So based on the working group's work, the working group and then brought to the board a recommendation that we pursue Sipa compliance by installing a minimal internet filter. The board agreed and endorsed the working group's recommendation. So should council tonight approve our recommendation for us to move forward with minimal filtering to become Sipa compliant, here's what that policy would look like. So we would filter on library-owned public computers only. And so these are the about 24 or so computers in our public computing area downstairs. And we have, I think, currently 3 or 4 in the teen room. So the filters would only be on the public computers. We would not filter staff computers. We would not filter anything on user devices, and our Wi-Fi would not be filtered. And that's primarily how most people use us now. Again, when this act was passed, the public computer or the computers at the public library were one of the only ways that people could access the internet. And of course, now many, many more people have devices and phones and access it that way and use our Wi-Fi. Again, we would filter, we would set all filters to minimal filtering. And these are some of the sort of rubrics and guidelines that we use with this vendor that Orange County has used. And again, Sipa is really focused on visual content. And Megan said, text content came through on sites where the visual was filtered, and that's how Sipa should work and filters should work. And for the user, public computers will have signage stating that a filter is in place and that they can request the filter to be removed, and staff will be trained to immediately remove the filter upon request by an adult. And I believe the adult does not need to give any kind of a reason. They simply ask for the filter to be removed. So tonight we are recommending that the council approve R12, authorizing the manager to revise our internet use policy and install that minimal internet filtering device so that we can become compliant with Sipa and pursue federal funding for technology and digital equity projects. I can stop sharing my screen And Megan and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Hey, council members, any clarifying questions? Ms. Berry?
Susan, in the signage, will it say that adults can ask for the filter to be removed? Okay, so it's not something that they have to inherently know. Okay.
Correct, yes.
I just want to make sure that that's disclosed. All right.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
There's not.
Okay, well, I'll bring it back to council for comments. Ms. Ryan, then Ms. Anderson.
Yeah, I thank you to staff for all of your presentation and research and answering my questions before I even knew that I had them to be answered. So I really appreciate that. I think you've made it clear that technology has changed significantly since council saw this last, both in the way people have access to devices and in the abilities and kind of filtering software that you have access to. I think that the program you described would meet the letter of the law that you need to without disrupting the searches of our patrons. So I support this effort.
Okay, Ms. Anderson and Ms. Berry.
Yeah, I agree. When this first came forward, I was the liaison to the library board, and I still am. And they have, along with Susan and Megan, just done a really excellent job of looking into this. I remember that council meeting and being a little actually surprised at how folks felt, but I think this has just been so responsive to that interest of really understanding what the filters would do in real life, and making sure that we're not, kind of keeping young people from looking for important information that they may be embarrassed or scared to look for at home. So I think also in the interest, we have a lot of access and equity interests at the library, always. And I think this is in service of that. And I feel confident after seeing the searches, which I'm sorry that y'all had to do, but I guess that's life in the fast lane for librarians. That you get to sometimes do interesting searches. But I really feel like this meets the interest, and I really don't have concerns about it. So just thank you to you and the board for really digging in and being responsive to the interests of the previous council, and hopefully this one as well.
Okay. Ms. Berry?
I too want to acknowledge the efforts that you all have put in along with your group to do this. And Susan, I really appreciate you making sure, because I missed the small groups, making sure that I understood what was coming before us this evening. And I'm so grateful that you have found a solution, that your group has found a solution where we can confidently say that we are meeting those guidelines, and we are making information available at the same time. So thank you for that.
Ms. Stegman, Mr. Searing?
Yeah, I certainly second thanks. I was wondering, and this was actually something the mayor said to me recently, but I would be interested in having a report back maybe in 6 months, 8 months, a year, whatever, just to see how it's going. I fully believe that we've moved past the concerns of the past, but it would be good to just hear to make sure there aren't unexpected consequences or something happening that we need to tinker with the policy at all. So I'd appreciate if we could hear, how it's going once you get it going. But thank you.
You can easily do that. The board shares that same interest. So once we get the filter installed, which will take us a little bit of time to get that done, we can certainly come back maybe approximately this time next year and say we're a year in and here's what the reporting shows us.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
That would be great. Thank you. Mr. Searing?
Just appreciate all the work that y'all have put into this, and I think this is just a minimal and reasonable restraint on a First Amendment right, which is fine in the context of the library and our users, and I support this unequivocally. So thank you.
Someone wanting to make a motion? Your cat.
Like to move.
R12, authorizing the manager to modify our internet usage policy.
Second.
And then also, I guess.
Ms. Anderson making the motion. Ms. Berry is seconding the motion. Okay,
thanks.
Get the stuff out there. Okay, it's all good. It's all good. All right, roll call vote. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Miller-Fucci.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Searing.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Thank you, Susan, Megan, and your team for working on this. Mr. Parker, Ms. Anderson, and I were the ones there. And again, this has come a long way for helping us understand and I think meeting the needs and the goals of our community. So thank you very much for doing that. All right.
Thank you.
All right, great. All right. Item number 18, update the Standing Advisory Board membership policy to allow boards to act to approve or deny matters under remote participation parameters on an ongoing basis. I'm not sure who wrote that title, Corey, but wow.
I mean, it can't be the winner of the most elaborate title, but
well, it had a lot.
maybe it's up there. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Corey Lyles with the Planning Department. I have a brief presentation, about 5 minutes, on some proposed updates to our remote participation policy for advisory boards. What we are recommending tonight is that you adopt a resolution to update the Standing Advisory Board membership policy, which is our overall policy guidance for all town advisory boards and commissions. And there is a section on remote participation parameters that this proposal would impact. You all are probably aware that we have had remote participation basically across the board for our advisory board since April of 2020, when the council reinstated a policy to allow and offer opportunities for boards to meet remotely and to count towards quorum when doing so. That policy was expanded in May following some guidance from the state that allowed them to do some decision-making in remote meetings. And then here we are before you, June 2022, for considering an update that would allow this policy to be more ongoing. What we've observed in the past now more than 2 years of conducting remote advisory board meetings, in many cases, we've seen the productivity of these meetings improve, where board members can use time effectively in this forum. We've seen attendance improve. For example, when advisory board members are traveling, they may still be able to tune into a meeting from remote places and be involved. We've also seen good results for public participation, where once people adjust to the technology, as we've all done, we see people interested and taking advantage of the opportunity to speak at remote meetings. With all these factors, we've observed at a staff level, we've observed that morale of board members seems to have improved, and that our facilitation of advisory board meetings has become easier. So with those benefits in mind, we're putting forward a policy proposal. You see a comparison here, and the column on the right notes what we're proposing, where we would still allow remote attendees or virtual attendees to count towards quorum. We would offer the opportunity to continue having votes on formal administrative actions for members attending virtually. In the current policy, that's only allowed during a state of emergency, but this would not be tied to that criteria. It would be ongoing. Formal administrative actions can include things like a planning commission's approval of a site plan, or community design commission, certain approvals they have. With the quasi-judicial hearings and decisions, these are conducted by our Board of Adjustment and our Historic District Commission. Our understanding of state law is that there is more limited opportunity to do those in a virtual forum. And so we would maintain the condition for only being during a state of emergency for those quasi-judicial matters. And so those boards would conduct a lot of business in person after the state of emergency ends. We also wanted to offer in the policy update confirmation and clarification that we're not limiting the number of meetings that an individual member could attend virtually, nor are we stating that there needs to be any kind of minimum number of members attending in person, so that a meeting could be fully remote or hybrid or fully in person. This really sets the stage for the advisory boards to have options and figure out what practice works best for them. I will also note that the state of emergency that they have been meeting virtually under is still in effect, even as much of the public health guidance is wound down. That is still on the books from the governor's office. We are not sure of the timing for the end of the state of emergency. And so we wanted to be a little proactive in getting this before council in case there's any changes over the summer break or anything that could happen with short notice, so that we're not caught unprepared. We took this proposal to a number of our advisory boards and commissions. You see here a list of those who gave a recommendation in favor or had favorable comments about this policy. We have other boards and commissions, and the advisory board membership policy applies to all of them. So these are not the only boards who would benefit, but ones that we engaged with. And so again, our recommendation is to adopt a resolution for this policy update, and just a summary there of what the changes would be, or in many cases, continuing what's been allowed in the state of emergency to continue on an ongoing basis. And I'm
Thank
happy
you very
to
much.
take any questions.
Bring us back to full screen. Are there any clarifying questions? I will say it's been interesting watching as we've learned how to deal through the pandemic. Beforehand, we had a lot of concerns about this, and now we're seeing a lot of better participation and things going on. Clarifying question, Ms. Ryan.
Yeah, first question is, so does the town provide any kind of tech support for board members, say if they don't have a laptop or if they don't have adequate internet access?
I'm not aware of any formal program. We certainly communicate with our advisory board members and try to understand their needs. I don't know if we've actually, I've not heard of any situation where we've provided equipment or other support other than perhaps guidance on how to use Zoom or whatever, what have you.
Okay, so I think as this policy kind of evolves, I'd like to look at that and see what that means. You know, in the same way that we provide childcare and we help provide transportation money, I think we need to look into that. And do we have, so what are our technical capabilities for running these? So if I'm on the Parks and Rec Commission and I'm meeting and I've got a third of my members remote, do I need a special room to do that? Are we equipped all throughout town to do that? What's it going to take for you guys to really roll this out?
And Maurice is noting something being correct in the
Councilmember Nguyen talked about that we provided equipment and tech support for members of the RICS committee. And
all right, so we do have
Maurice is
one
verifying.
example. In terms of like a hybrid meeting where some members aren't in person, I mean, staff who are working in town hall now are gaining experience with this. You know, we have conference rooms that are equipped to, you know, with webcams. And so you can use the screen for both communicating with the members who are attending remotely and having everyone see the materials being presented. So that would probably be another learning experience if we're going into some hybrid meetings more often with advisory boards. But similar to how we started off with this 2 years ago, I think we could adjust.
So yeah, and I just to comment, it might make sense to kind of roll this out 1 or 2 boards at a time. You know, I just think about it, but I know that trying sometimes getting the tech to work is a lot of the challenge. Thank you. I mean, yeah,
Suggestion.
yeah, thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? All right, any members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
No.
I know our advisory board members were very interested in this. I want to see, so we'll bring it back. Any statements or motions?
I move R13.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Stegman, seconded by Mr. Nguyen, and Ms. Berry has a comment.
Yeah, back to what Councilmember Ryan was saying, that we continue to make sure, as we're trying to diversify our boards, to have a wide range of experiences. I'm also hoping that this doesn't create another barrier to participation. But I have to say that those boards and committees in which I'm the liaison in commissions, it has been very helpful for them to be able to attend. So I do see the upside to it. I just really appreciate Councilmember Ryan's comments and ask that we be mindful. Thank you.
Okay. We've got a motion on the floor and we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Stegman? Ms. Anderson?
Aye.
Ms. Berry?
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen?
Aye.
Ms. Miller-Fushi?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Searing?
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Thank you for bringing this forward in a timely fashion because we're not sure, like you said, when the state of emergency is going to actually end and when we're going to all be coming back together. So, all right. Thank you very much. I will tell you that we learned today that Hillsborough's worked out the hybrid method and is sharing it with folks. If we want to borrow information from them, they're willing to share. So they figured it out somehow. So, okay. All right. This brings us to item number 19. Consider staff response to Environmental Stewardship Advisory Board petition regarding electrification. Welcome, John. We can see your slideshow. There we go. Good pictures.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, sorry, I was muted and didn't realize it. Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is John Richardson. I serve as the town's community sustainability manager. As the mayor just said, I'm here to provide the staff's initial response to a climate action-based petition from the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Board that's aimed at advancing electrification in Chapel Hill. And my presentation will take about 5 to 6 minutes. Okay, so the petition, a little bit of background on the petition. It was received and referred earlier this year in January. And it's really asking the council to consider adopting specific policies that are aimed at helping our community transition to all electric buildings. And for anyone who's wondering how electrification connects with climate action, the basic idea is that as our electricity grid gets cleaner, as we add more renewables like wind and solar, so do the things that use electricity, like our buildings and even our vehicles if they are electric. And so our recommendation this evening is that the council consider the options presented in our staff report and also to provide any additional direction as you all see fit. And just a little bit of additional context, as the council well knows, last year, the town adopted a climate action and response plan. The plan charts a course for how we can effectively try and zero out, eliminate our local proportion of greenhouse gas emissions by no later than 2050. The plan also describes how we can begin to adapt to our changing climate and specifically work on ways of increasing our recovery time in the face of climate-related disruptions. And so a little bit more about the plan and the goals within it. We have goals, science-based emissions targets, I should say, both near term and in the long run. So in the near term, a 50% emissions reduction target by 2030, and a net zero target by 2050. And we've also got clean renewable energy goals as well, 80% by 2030 and 100% by 2050. Beyond those targets and ways in which we can begin to achieve our goals, the plan outlines specific targets for electrification, starting with a 40% goal for new buildings being all electric, 40% of those new buildings, I should say, by 2025, and 100% by 2030. And then along with that, specific unit counts, 7,500 for 2030 and 15,000 for 2050. And this is in regards to retrofitting existing buildings. So I just want to point out that as the report notes, most of the projects we're seeing within the development review process are either all electric or all electric ready, meaning that they can make the switch in the future. And so this is a really positive trend that we're seeing. And just a bit more details about the recommendation itself. As you all saw in the packet beginning on page 365, we've outlined 3 tentative policy options for further evaluation, things we can explore in more depth if you'd like us to. We've also highlighted some questions that we think will help us better understand the implications and the potential impacts of the policies. So things around understanding cost benefit scenarios like dollars to carbon benefit, that kind of thing that's come up with this council before, as well as operational impacts, if there are any, and the need for possible incentives to support retrofits. And then lastly, there is some additional information in the report around these 4 topics: the benefits of electrification, our legal authority to regulate energy sources in the state of North Carolina as a local government, green hydrogen as a possible future replacement for natural gas, and then some of the challenges and emerging solutions for electrification. So I won't read you the recommendation again, but I will conclude by saying if y'all would like us to explore the questions posed in the staff report, we can certainly do that, and any others that you all may have this evening. And we could try to return, if it's of interest to you, we could try to bring something back in the fall for your consideration. And then finally, I will just also add that the timing may also give us more insight into Duke Energy's recently released Carolina's carbon plan and what impacts that plan may have on some of the questions we've identified within the report. So I'll conclude there and be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, John. All right, council, clarifying questions. Mr. Parker.
Yeah, won't go into comments, both I think it's a good idea, but can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing other cities, in many cases far larger than Chapel Hill, either considering or adopting policies, similar to what we're thinking about. Can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing and how that might inform our decision making?
Sure. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of large cities, as you mentioned, Councilmember Parker, mainly cities that are located in states where the legal authority is fairly clear that they've got that ability to do that. Here in North Carolina, as you all probably saw in the report, it's uncertain at best, as we noted it. And so there are things that we need to consider in that legal context. And so, I think part of what we're recommending, and we can look into this further, is to see, are there ways we can incentivize some of this or work within the legal framework that we have here in the state of North Carolina, which is not the same as many of the places that we're used to seeing and reading about in the newspaper that have home rule or some version of that and have a clearer local authority to make these decisions.
And just as a follow-up to that, so given the ambiguity, if we proceeded with something like this, what could be an adverse consequence to us given the ambiguity, what you didn't say is that we don't, that that we don't have the right to do this. You're saying it's ambiguous. So if we chose to go ahead with this, what would be the risks that we would face in so doing?
I think probably the main risk would be the potential that this could bring a lot of attention and difficulty from a legal perspective. It could be that the state of North Carolina might look at taking action to further restrict how local governments can act locally in this way. And so I think there are potential legal considerations here as far as what may happen if the town were to go forward with something like this. I'm not an attorney, though. I don't know if our attorney would want to weigh in further, but that would be my perspective on it.
Okay, and just before we hear from Ms. Anderson, are there any other towns or cities in North Carolina looking at doing this, or would we be kind of standing alone?
I'm not aware of another local government in this state that's gone forward with some kind of ban, I guess you could say.
Or just even thinking about it at this point.
Yeah, I'm not aware of one. There could be some, and that's something we could research, but I'm not aware of any that have put this forward for consideration. I do think there are several communities around the state that are trying to work within our legal framework to advance electrification in other ways.
Okay, that's very great, helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Anderson, Ann Anderson, do you want to comment?
Oh, yeah, I think John said it correctly. And I just wanted to clarify that when we're talking about uncertainty as to legal authority in North Carolina, we're talking about authority to prohibit certain types of fuel uses on private property, right? So that's the confines of our, our sort of legal restrictions. As to town-owned property, I think you can do exactly as you wish. But I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very good clarification.
Any other clarifying questions? All right, any member of the public wishing to speak on this item? We're down to a handful of dedicated folks tonight.
There's not.
Okay, I bring it back for council comments. Mr. Parker again.
Guess I've been hanging out with the ESAP too long. But I mean, if we could do this, and you recognize the challenges, I strongly support it. It's what we need to do. I mean, methane, fracking to get methane is a huge contributor to greenhouse gas and to, greenhousing, and then burning gas. Then the burning of the gas also generates carbon dioxide. So, if it can be done, it would be great. So, I certainly support continuing to look into it and, seeing just how far we can push it, whether if we can't, do it through a legal prohibition of gas, then at least what incentives or other kinds of things might be possible to get us here. But I think it's where we need to be.
Yeah, just one thing on that. I will say too, fossil fuels are a very unpredictable market. They bounce up and down. And so in the long run, I think there could be some natural market incentives that will also prevail as we transition.
Okay, well, I'll share. I agree completely. I like setting the, pace on this and saying this is where we all need to go. And it's true, we do. And I do see a benefit in putting it out there. I understand the legal challenges, but we started off with asking everyone to be solar roof ready and put in EV charging stations. And now they all come forward. We haven't mandate they do it. They come forward and offer it because they know we're going to ask. And I think putting that out there, saying we're going to ask you to be all electric, that's what we'd like to see you do, whether we make it an ordinance or whatever. I think we put that as the standard. This is what we're expecting to see. This is the future. I think it sends a huge message back to Duke Energy, who's still looking at doing 50 natural gas, producing plants across the state instead of going full hog on renewable energy. So I like moving forward with this and researching more, but also making it the thing we ask every time that they come forward with a proposal on a new building or renovation. We'd say, we'd like you to be all electric. And we say it that way. We'd like you to be. And so I do see a great benefit in setting the standard for that and waking up some of the other cities across the state saying you do have the ability to ask for it. You might not be able to mandate it just yet, but you can certainly ask for it. I'm seeing some noddings of heads. So are we good with, okay. So John, is this enough information for you this evening? We'd like you to plow ahead with more information and consider putting it on the we'd like to see and when projects come in.
Yes.
We'd like to encourage them.
Yes, we can do both of those things.
Okay. Okay. Is that good? All right. Good work. Yeah, keep it up. And what else you can find for us to help reduce our carbon footprint? We would love that. So anyway.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, 9:36 and you got through 19 items on the agenda. That's pretty impressive, crowd. I'm proud of you. Very proud of you. Okay. We do have advisory board announcements to make. And first off, I will just say, we're really pleased that people want to serve on advisory boards. We still have plenty of openings on some different boards. We still have appointments to make. So we encourage folks to apply. We know that we specifically need some more applicants for our Board of Adjustment. This one meets once a month, and it's a great way to learn about town government and seeing the other side of things when they don't get approved or people wanting variances. And you learn a lot about town procedures and things going on. So I highly recommend that one and several of the other ones out there, but I know that we have a great need for that board right now. So here are the results from the voting earlier this evening. The council reappointed Susan Lyons and John Weiss to the Community Design Commission. And the council is seeking additional applicants to the Community Design Commission, so please apply. The council reappointed Simon Palmore and Tim Presley, and then appointed Devin Sierratas, to the Community Policing Advisory Committee. We do know that they've also put a petition in to change their name, but that's what they are right now, so we'll say that. The council reappointed Rex Mercer and Dustin Mills to the Housing Advisory Board. The council seeks nonprofit housing provider professional applicants right now. So that seat's still open to the Housing Advisory Board. Please apply. The council appointed Shane Brogdon, Marcella Twomley, and Christopher Worrell to the Parks, Greenways, and Recreation Commission. The council reappointed Heather Brutz and appointed Stephen Bevington and Joseph Johnson to the Transportation and Connectivity Advisory Board. Again, we have some more appointments to make next week at next week's meeting, and we still have openings. And so we would love for folks to apply. We actually know some other openings that will be coming up during the summer as we have individuals who are moving or changing situations, and we'll be having some other openings. So please apply. And we are always looking for diverse perspectives. Most boards, no experience is necessary. So we would encourage you to put your application in out there. So anyway. That brings us to the end of this meeting for this evening. Wow. And we will see you next Wednesday virtually at 7 p.m. So that being said, this meeting is adjourned.
Good night.